So thank you all for joining us. Thank to everyone who joined us on the walking tour, and we just celebrated many of the examples of the contributions of African Americans to this city and to this country that are commemorated here in the city of Boston. I want to thank Dr. Noel Trent, President and CEO of the Museum of African American History. Thank you for hosting us. Dr. Amari Paris Jeffries, President and CEO of Embrace Boston. Rasan Hall, Esquire, President and CEO of the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts, each of whom will speak. Today we stand here in Boston, where the fight for freedom and dignity has been etched into our schools, our buildings, and the very stones of our streets. We stand on the grounds of the Abel Smith School, one of the city's oldest schools for black children, when education itself was an act of defiance. At a time when this country openly banned black children from getting the same resources, the same respect, and the same future given to white children, this school was a beacon of possibility for those families and for those children. We know we must look at lessons taught in this school and learn them today, especially as too many children are still blocked from opportunities and barred from pursuing their dreams. We stand right by the African Meeting House, where abolitionists planned, preached, prayed, and prepared. It is also where Frederick Douglass recruited soldiers for the 54th and 55th Massachusetts regiments, two of the first Army regiments during the Civil War composed entirely of black soldiers. We know the power of a revolution that is fought by and for the many, not for the few. We stand just a few blocks from where Crispus Attucks was killed, a man of African and Native descent who was the first to fall in the Boston Massacre. We cannot let that history be forgotten. The first to give his life in the fight for freedom was an African American, Native American. We know we can learn from the sacrifices of the past in order to find courage for the future. These are not footnotes in our history. They are the chapters of the story of the history of the United States of America, and they cannot be erased. They are the stories of black courage, black brilliance, and black resilience, pushing this nation towards its highest ideals through its most challenging and dangerous times. Today we are living in a dangerous time as well, a time when President Trump and his minions are not just rewriting policy, they are trying to rewrite truth. They are trying to rewrite the history of the United States of America. The Trump administration doesn't just do climate denial, it wants a climate of denial of the role of black people, of brown people, of the threat of climate change. He wants it all erased from all of our national park locations all across the United States. Trump is reaching deep into our archives, our museums, our parks, our classrooms, ripping out the pages that reference slavery, of the struggles of black and brown people, of indigenous peoples, of women, of the LGBTQ pioneers. Trump attacks the truth that are going to eat at the foundation of our country, rotting the timbers that keep our nation strong and crumbling the mortar that holds our nation together. As Frederick Douglass once said, there are buildings which will hold a few, but which will break down under the weight of a crowd. The ice of the river may be strong enough to bear a man, but would break through under the weight of an elephant. The ice under us in this country is very thin and is made very weak by the warm fogs of prejudice. Frederick Douglass was right then, and he was talking about the Donald Trumps of 2025 in our own nation. When Trump orders the removal of references to slavery from our national parks when he tells the Smithsonian to strip out the stories of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. When he erases transgender from the record of Stonewall, he is taking an axe to the very foundation of our nation. Now, let's be very clear. Censoring history is an act of violence. We know that freedom in this nation has always been contested, fought for tooth and nail by people who were never meant to have it. And we're not ashamed of that. We're proud of that. We're proud of them. We're proud of how they sought to redeem the American Revolution for everyone in our nation. Trump wants to censor the facts that created movements for freedom and justice. Auction blocks, internment camps, denial of citizenship to immigrants, fire hoses in Birmingham and Stonewall, censorship that doesn't heal the past. It puts a shiny coat of paint over rot. Only the truth can fix it. That is why I, along with Representative Seth Moulton, spearheaded the effort to designate Salem Maritime as a National Historic Park, expanding its boundaries, ensuring that our history in full is told, the pain and the injustice, as well as the resilience and revolution. History belongs to the people, not to presidents, not to political parties, not to those who would sell our memory for a cleaner, whiter myth. We stand here today because we must resist, not just with words, but with action. First is something we can all do right now, not just here in Massachusetts, but all across our nation. At the University of Minnesota, there is an ongoing effort to preserve our history, where you can simply take a picture of signs and monuments telling the true history of America and use the hashtag #SaveOurSigns so that we have a record of what really happened before the Trump administration erases it. Don't let their campaign of censorship win. Help us protect real information from their disinformation agenda. And we must stand with museums and curators, teachers, and historians who refuse to be complicit in the lie being told by the Trump administration every single day. We must protect the archives, the oral histories, the monuments of the struggle, the places where truth still lives. We must fund them, and we must defend them. I will fight every day on the floor of the United States Senate and alongside anyone who wants to do that, because this is what America was meant to be. Because Melina Cass is the story of America, too. Ruth Batson is the story of America, too. Mel King is the story of America, too. Phyllis Wheatley is the story of America, too. They're all part of this story, and none of it can be erased. So we have just such a great gathering of people who are with us here today. Former State Senator Linda Docina Forey. We were earlier with State Representative Chris Worrell and Boston City Councilor Brian Worrell. We have former State Representative Carlos Enriquez with us. We have the ACLU Massachusetts Racial Justice Director Tracy Griffith, Senior Advisor for Racial Justice for the city, Laurie Nelson. We have Dr. Lewis here, a professor of history from Emerson College. We have Dr. Singleton, director of the Royal House. And we have Dr. Terry Whitmore, assistant professor for higher education at Boston University. But first, let me introduce Dr. Noel Trent, who is the president and CEO of the Museum of African American History of Boston and Nantucket, who is hosting us here today. Thank you for your great leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Markey. I don't know, maybe being here in this pulpit, this African Meeting House has a Baptist church roots. I think you channeled a little Baptist minister rhetoric there, and that is more than welcome here. I welcome you to the African Meeting House of Boston, the oldest existing black church building in the country, built in 1806, and it's one of 4 historic buildings we steward. Now, Senator Markey and his team has been incredibly supportive of this institution as we've navigated this time. But I also want to thank two elders of the cultural heritage space here in Boston and for the nation, and they are Dr. Barry Gaither and the Honorable Byron Rushing. In 1978, they joined a number of other Black museum professionals in Detroit, Michigan, and chaired by Dr. Gaither, created what was then known as the African American Museum Association, what is now known today as the Association of African American Museums. This group came together with the direct purpose of supporting each other and creating a network of support for Black museums and Black museum professionals across this great country. From that 1978 moment, it has expanded to hundreds of sites across the country. So we owe them a debt because they saw, among many notable others, that this history deserves to be preserved. You are in a sacred space this afternoon that was built largely by and for Black people. Right now, we are standing on floorboards that are over 200 years old. So every person who enters into this building is literally walking in the footsteps of history. Now, as we stand here today, I think of the community on the north side of Beacon Hill, who in the 19th century saw the African Meeting House as a safe and welcoming space. It is here where the Massachusetts Colored Association, one of the early abolitionist groups, met, and where William Lloyd Garrison formed the New England Anti-Slavery Society. Here, where debates and ideas around abolishing slavery were disseminated across the country in the spirit of justice. I bring that same spirit here this afternoon. You see, museums operate with the consideration of the past and present and future simultaneously. The past in what we collect and preserve and share with the public. The present in how we connect with our audiences, and the future in the consideration of our work to ensure the place, stories, and objects will continue to exist for the next generation. As a field, we operate in the consideration of all of this in terms of decades and generations. We work knowing that we will have an impact today while planting seeds for the future. Historically, the Black community has preserved its legacy through oral traditions, historic buildings, art, objects, and the unwavering commitment of community historians and scholars. Individuals like William Still and Zora Neale Hurston recorded people's stories and experiences. George Washington Williams, William Cooper Nell, Leah Amos Pendleton, Anna Julia Cooper, and others wrote the first histories chronicling people of African descent in the Americas. And for more than a century, academic research has generated new scholarship on the African American experience, challenging the dominant narratives. Using the historical method, relying on primary sources, written and created by people who witnessed these moments. Quite frankly, we use the documents of history. These are not fabrications, they are truth. Black museums were created out of a grassroots recognition of the importance of our history, our contributions to the nation, and our presence throughout its history. Our own founder, Sue Bailey Thurman, arrived in Boston in 1953 with a purpose of bringing forward the story of Boston's historic Black community. That would ultimately happen in 1963 when the museum began to be organized, and in 1972 when we were formally incorporated. At this moment, it is very clear there is an effort to remove Black history from the overall historical record. Even efforts to remove the uncomfortable and complex part of our collective history is an erasure. The threat is real. This is not a rhetorical exercise. My colleagues and I deal with this threat every day that we wake up and do this work. So here at this museum, we remain dedicated to telling the truth, reflecting the history of this community and how their story reflects the rich complexities of the human experience in this country. It is more than tragedy. It is not just successes and achievements. It is joy, it is sorrow, it is resilience, it is perseverance, and everything in between. We stand with our peer institutions across the country, despite the latest efforts to minimize and erase our community. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. In that spirit, I will repeat the words we have been repeating over the last few months. Our pledge, in that spirit of resilience that occupied this space from the early 1800s through the antebellum period and the Civil War, we will not be erased. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Amari Parrish Jeffries, the President and CEO of Embrace Boston.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Tran, and your team for hosting us today. In Washington, an August ago, a preacher stood on the steps of a republic, a park, and said the check came back March, insufficient funds. We still carry that notice in our pockets. We still walk to that window of the future and ask to be paid in full. This is why parks matter. This is why the Park Service matters, because memory needs a body, grass and granite, benches and bronze, a place where a story can breathe and people can gather. On Boston Common, the oldest public park in a country, we do more than stroll. We learn how a city decides who belong. Rangers unlock gates and history. They light Freedom Trail at dusk, and they keep the Black Heritage Trail alive, where the African Meeting House and abolitionist houses turn lessons into footsteps you can walk with your children. Monuments are a city's vocabulary. They are how a place speaks to its own heart. Shaw and the 54th face Beacon Street and say courage has a face and a uniform. The Embrace rises on the Common and says love is instruction. Love is a plan for power shared. Confederate monuments were built to break that plan. Not headstones to the dead, but signposts to the living. They told black people where not to stand, where not to vote, where not to dream. They turned defeat into a fairy tale and violence into a virtue. Stone can be a syllabus. Stone can also be a weapon. Boston knows the difference. We have seen a statue widen a circle and a plaque open a door. We have watched the Common sing on Juneteenth and hold grief after verdicts. In August, we have watched Carson Beach turn from target to testimony. Public space is not neutral. It either invites or it excludes. It either teaches the whole truth or it rehearses a lie. Dr. King called it a bad check. Parks are the new lunch counters. Monuments are the receipts and the promissory notes for democracy, the record of what has been paid and what still must be owed. Every ranger who opens the gate does the quiet work of democracy. Every inscription that names the enslaved, the soldiers, the organizers, the artists, lays another brick on the road from memory to justice. So we invest in the caretakers and care, in truth told on site with names, dates, and context. We choose monuments that lift the living and teach the young. We retire the threats, retire the lies. The Common gives us room. The Harbor gives us horizon. Roxbury gives us heartbeat. The Park Service keeps the doors open. Parks are democracy. We show it by tending the ground, telling the whole story on site, and turning strangers into neighbors. Boston, show the nation how we remember. Thank you.
Now we're going to hear from Rahsaan Hall, President and CEO of the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Let not these friends of secession sing to me their siren song of peace and goodwill until they can stop my ears to the screams and groans of the dying victims at Memphis. Those were the words of U.S. Congressman Thaddeus Stevens when he introduced the 14th Amendment to the House of Representatives on May 8th, 1866. He spoke these words only 5 days after the conclusion of the Memphis Massacre. On May 1st, Fort Pickering in Memphis housed one of the few all-black heavy artillery regiments. And at the conclusion of the Civil War, those mostly black soldiers at that fort were mustered out of the service. They were disbanded and their power was stripped. And as a collection of black individuals in the city of Memphis, there was joy and revelry for the completion of their service. And in that joy and revelry, former Confederate soldiers and white police officers assumed there was a threat and began a 3-day assault on the black citizens of Memphis, killing 46 people, raping 9 women, destroying 8 churches and many other buildings. 91 homes were destroyed. And it was in the aftermath that this nation moved forward in an aggressive way to pass the 14th Amendment. Well, why is this story relevant to why we are here and what we're talking about? I dare say that Senator Markey lives and moves and has his being in the spirit of Congressman Thaddeus Stevens. But also because the way we know about that May 1st through 3rd massacre in 1866 is because there's a marker, a historical marker that signifies what happened in Memphis, a marker that signifies the destruction that happened in Memphis, a marker that is a symbol and a reminder of one of the major impetuses behind the adoption of the 14th Amendment, the very amendment that grants equal protection under the law, the very amendment that provides privileges and immunities, the very amendment that provides birthright citizenship, which is now under attack by this administration. It's important that we have these historical markers to remind us of our history. It's important that the National Park Service partnered with a local activist in Memphis, Phyllis Aluko, after the Tennessee Historical Commission refused to host the sign because they wanted to use the word riot instead of massacre. And so as we sit in 2025, the Urban League has issued its State of Black America report, and it determines that we are in a state of emergency. We're in a state of emergency because the very amendments and very institutions that were created to protect and provide for us are now under attack. And what sustains that attack is the erasure of history. Eliminating monuments, whitewashing history, erasing the contributions of black people in this nation is what sustains and supports and accelerates the attack, not just on Black America, but on all of America. And so, Senator Markey, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your work. Thank you for living in the legacy of Congressman Thaddeus Stevens. But thank you all for your demands. Dr. Trent, power concedes nothing without a demand. And so on today, we demand that history not be whitewashed. On today, we demand that our history not be erased. On today, we demand that the National Park Service continues to be funded and is not manipulated into a tool of oppression by erasing the history of the contributions and the harms that make up the fabric and tapestry of this nation. We demand it.
Wow. Thank you, Omari. Thank you, Rahsaan. Thank you, Doctor. I mean, there's preaching going on here. I think that it matches with the greatest that has ever been delivered from this pulpit. So any questions that you may have for any of these great leaders? Can you speak up just a little bit? Yeah. By the tens of millions, Americans visit our national parks every single year. They have to let it be known that they object, that they protest when history is erased, when the history of black and brown people in our country, the history of enslavement, the history of oppression, all of that history is part of what the United States of America is. The Constitution began by just saying, in order to create a more perfect union, they stipulated right up front we were not perfect. We had to become more perfect. That's what the Civil War was all about. That's what the freedom marches were all about, going south in the 1950s and 1960s. It's all part of our history to redeem the promise of the Constitution for everyone in our country. And so for the millions of people, the tens of millions of Americans who go to our national parks every year, it's imperative that they let the world know, either on their own social media or back in their hometowns, that something terrible is happening in our country. The same thing, I will add, is true for the erasure of any reference to climate change in any of the national parks, any of the museums in our country. Environmental justice is real. It's black and brown people who are the ones suffering most from environmental justice. When climate change and the effects of climate change are erased, then so too is the debate, the discussion which we have to have about how to remediate, how to have the reparations that are necessary for those communities to protect themselves against climate change. So we have to stand up for history. We have to stand up for science. So, Rahsaan.
Yeah, I'll just add briefly, we can uncover history in our own community. We can preserve history in our own community. We spoke about the Save Our Signs initiative, going around taking photos and geo-marking where those monuments are. But also we can provide for the preservation of our history, taking out memberships in these museums, supporting them financially so that they continue to exist no matter what type of federal funding cuts come our way. So it's uncovering, it's preserving, and it's providing.
Okay.
I will just add to that we have our national park system, right? But we also have a number of park partners, right? And so to encourage everyone to go visit the parks, right? But also visit the park partners. These are people who are in historic districts. For us, we're part of the Boston African American National Historic Site. So absolutely visit, become a member, pay the admission, but also know that what is allowed to happen at the federal level can also happen at the state and local level. And many culturally specific organizations, if they are not tied to a federal entity, they are tied to a state and local entity. So it's incredibly important that people continue to advocate on all levels of government that affect your community, and that you continue to support these museums throughout the country, because the reality is it's not just Black museums, it's that small museum that you remember visiting as a kid. It's that place that you had your wedding. It's that park that has the petting zoo and the historical farm. All of us need your help right now. And the best way to do that is to show up for us. Attend our programs, become a member, bring your guests, make it part of the to-do list that you do when you have visitors at your home. We need you now more than ever. We cannot survive this moment without you.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what my colleague said, and I think one of the things that many towns can do, we got Ari from the Du Bois Sculpture Project, you know, what folks can do in their own towns. There are historic figures, Stokes in Malden, Lewis Latimer is from Chelsea, Du Bois is from Great Barrington. Local towns and municipalities can support and use their local dollars to support some of these house museums and these smaller institutions, particularly the BIPOC-led institutions and sculpture projects. And so I think that is a way that we can think about local internal dollars instead of relying only on federal dollars. We're going to have to think creatively over the next couple of years of how we support these institutions, including the ones up here.
Questions from anyone? Thank you all so much. Thank you.
There's one more question right there.
Oh. Are you with the press? Yeah, please. If you could just speak up a little.
Yes. So for us, in April, we received a letter that our grant that we were provided we received through the Institute of Museum and Library Services was terminated. That was close to $500,000 awarded over 3 years. Now, in the weeks following that, our state attorney general joined a number of other state attorney generals in filing a lawsuit in Rhode Island around that particular grant termination. There has been an injunction put in place, and so we received a grant reinstatement letter in May. However, we have been informed that at any point through that legal process that those funds could now be lost. So the confidence that we once had in the federal grants has now been removed because of that particular issue. In addition, as a partner of the National Park Service, there were a number of grants and other agreements that we were eligible to receive, and the dynamics of that relationship has greatly shifted to be in line with the executive orders coming out of the White House as well as the secretarial orders coming out of the Department of Interior. And so now we have to take into consideration, if we were to receive funds, we are now being asked to align ourselves with not only the executive orders and secretarial orders that exist at this moment, but any more that would come out during the duration of that particular agreement. So that is essentially opening up ourselves to high risk of review and potentially allowing us to be erased in some way, shape, or form. And so for us in this moment, it is looking at finding other sources of funding. Like many institutions, we rely on grants, corporate support, individual support, and our gate or admissions and other revenue that we generate. So for like us, many nonprofits and other museums, the paradigm has shifted. And we are all trying to figure out what will that look like at the end of all of this.
Any other questions?
More comment than a question. History is usually something we think of as static and that we don't have to defend until it's threatened. And I just wanted to thank the 6 of you and those that work for you for actually leading us in terms of seeing this for what it is and leading that movement. So I want to say thank you all in all.
Thank you.